What is up, everybody? Wednesday night, we are here live with you for another episode of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. And shout out to Rick in the YouTube comments. I did have a little bit of a typo when I put out the episode earlier today. We were joined today by Bills Mafia co-creator Del Reid, not Bills Mafina, which Rick had a little fun with that. Always joined by my co-host Ryan Talbot. We're having a little fun tonight, boys. Me and Ryan were talking about this week's episode a couple days ago, and obviously it's been a tough week for me. We lost our second dog, so it's been, I've kind of been off the map for the last 48 or so hours, and I just wanted to bring on a friend. Get you on here, Del. Let's talk some Bills. Let's talk some 26 shirts. Have some fun. We'll take Bills questions. But that's kind of where I'm at. And you were like, I reached out to you. I think it was on Monday, and you're like, absolutely, let's do it. How are you, my friend?
Awesome. Great. And I just said it to you a moment ago, but I'll say it one more time, dude. It sucks about your dog. I'm so sorry. I can peek. I can brag a little bit. I got to meet both your dogs over the past, several months. Good dogs, man. Good dogs. Anyways, I'm sorry. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, let's talk about like Bills. I'll make sure I know what I sound like. I know what I'm talking about. And let's do it. You guys are such experts. I'm so intimidated. I did a thing with Cover One a couple years ago with Greg and Aaron. I must have said like 75 disclaimers. It was just I get so nervous. I get so intimidated. Like I get that imposter syndrome when I'm around you smart Bills guys.
No. First of all, so we want to bring you on here because you bring that ultimate fan perspective. Like, being in the know about everything, but you don't do this for a job. So it's kind of like that nice kind of mixture of things. And then, so don't feel any pressure. Like we're just, a couple guys sitting around without a beer in our hands, but talking shop. And then Ryan, I saw a comment in here that we were a little late because we were in hair and makeup. So I think they did a good job on you. You're looking nice.
Don't have to worry so much about the hair part of that portion. They can devote all that time to you and that mane of yours. I kind of shave it once a week and I'm good to go from there.
So before we get into some Bill stuff, and thank you for some of the folks in the comments mentioning my dog, and you can go check out pictures of it on Twitter. I tweeted out some pictures of him, some late in the run there. We got to do a couple really good things with them, fun things last week, so that was great. But I want to talk about Bills. I want to be distracted tonight, so let's get into all of that for sure. But before we do, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're catching this live or on replay, hit that subscribe button. We cruised past 2K this past week. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about everybody's excitement about the mini camp episode because we didn't get a chance to see a lot out there, Ryan, but I think there was enough there, to kind of get an early idea on a couple of these guys just from a stature perspective, their demeanor out there. And it was a fun episode. We were able to talk a little bit about that. Hit the like button on this episode right now. And then, of course, subscribe if you haven't already. 26 shirts, Mr. Del Reid. Some big news recently. How long has it been? And tell our watchers, our viewers, a little bit about what's going on at the company.
Yeah. About 8 days ago, last Tuesday, we opened up our, retail showroom, as we call it, in Tri-Main Center. We moved to a new suite in Tri-Main Center because we outgrew the one we had been in since day one. So it was a little bittersweet leaving where we were, but this new space we have it's almost exactly twice the size that we had. It's naturally broken up into 3 areas. We took over from a marketing firm that was in that place that had just put a bunch of time and effort and money into making it look real nice, and then COVID hit, and then they went fully remote, and they decided to stay that way. So we kind of slid in, and it's nicer than anything we've ever been able to work in. And so that naturally in that little center spot of the suite, and Matt, I know you saw it. You were in a few weeks ago. It just lends itself completely to just having it. I call it the inverse kiosk. You go to the mall, you walk around the kiosk, you look at all the different things. This one, you kind of walk inside of it, and you can see the stuff on the walls hanging and everything. We got stuff in the back we'll run and grab for people, but we can, show off some of the stuff we have. But it's been great, man. We opened up last Tuesday. I mean, we had a steady stream of people all last week. It was great. We had people coming in yesterday, today. Today's Wednesday. All my dates are messed up, but it's been great. Every day we just have people coming in and just want to see the place, want to, check out the shirts in person. Anybody who's ever met me at a pop-up and we have the shirts on the table, I'll say like, touch the shirts, touch them. They feel really nice. I kind of take a lot of pride in that because I'm a t-shirt snob, and I wouldn't sell someone crap. I wouldn't sell something I wouldn't wear myself. So they get to actually see the product themselves. And it's great just being able to, interact with, I guess they're customers, but really I think of them as partners because we can't give this money if they don't buy the shirts. So we get to meet all of our customers / partners, face to face. It's awesome. It's a new thing for us, obviously, because we're almost strictly e-commerce, but now we have our own, our own flag planted. It's really cool. And who knows what the future is going to bring, but it's really great to be doing this right now.
Yeah, and you're right. The shirts are high quality. They're fantastic. You guys do an outstanding job with the designs. I love the if you give a Buffalo a chicken wing shirt, Matt repping one right now. But how exciting is it when a Bills rookie, in this case, in Greg Rousseau, comes along, gets drafted, and you find out within a day of him getting drafted maybe that his nickname is Groot, in terms of coming up with T-shirt designs? Does that make life that much easier for you guys when you get something like that?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Like we had a design all set to go that was in a completely different direction, and then all of a sudden he does an interview and his name is he goes by Groot, and it's like it's literally like, okay, stop the presses, like call the one artist we were working with, like, dude, you're awesome, we love you, we're going in this direction instead. He's but you got to move quickly. But what was crazy was that morning one of his marketing reps reached out to us and said, hey, we'd love to do a shirt with you guys. And we were like, yeah, that train's already left the station. You like, hop on board, And so we actually were able to run it by Greg and make sure that he was cool with it, that he liked the design. He loved it, so we sent some to his family. It's really cool. And it is absolutely surreal, for a dude to be, in the organization for literally less than 24 hours and have his reps wanting to do stuff with us. It was great. And shout out to Teresa, who is Andre Reid's promotions manager. She did a great job of helping make that all happen as well too. So it's crazy, dude. It's crazy. And anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that as much as I love the Bills, that's pretty much as much as I love Marvel movies and comics and everything as well. So for those two worlds to kind of just sync up was great.
What is that part of it like, the creative process? Like, I feel like you juggle a lot of different things when it comes to that. Not only the creative side of things, like coming up with good ideas, but you're also, I've noticed, inundated with ideas all the time. Like people tagging you guys like, oh, do this shirt. How does that process work to where you do kind of maybe gravitate to some of those ideas or say no to some of those ideas? Take us inside the walls of 26 shirts of kind of deciding what to do with all these different ideas.
Well, first of all, and I'm not blowing smoke, it is an honor. It really is humbling that somebody has an idea, something happens, and immediately they think of us and they want us to make that idea happen. I think I talked about this last time I was on there with you guys. That 49ers game, that Monday night game, that was such an awesome game. The Bills won handily. So many cool things happened during that game between the Rockabye Beasley and just so many different things happened. We were inundated with ideas, and we actually ended up doing 3 designs based off of one game. It was crazy. But yeah, so people often will either tweet us, email us, shoot me a DM, all these things. And I don't take that for granted, but it really some of the ideas are good and some of them aren't so good. If it's a good idea, obviously we'll work with either the person who had the concept, or sometimes it's a fully fleshed out piece of artwork in the inbox. That's the best when you come in, you fire up the laptop in the morning, there's something there waiting for you in your mail account, and the artwork is done, the concept you never even thought of, and you're like, yeah, we'll run with this. But so that's great. And like I said, some of them aren't so hot, in which case I never want to just tell someone no, or just be, unless there's a very obvious reason, we can't do that because it's an intellectual property nightmare, because we have to be really respectful of, copyrights and trademarks and stuff. But we'll do our best. Sometimes even like if it's a concept, we'll even do everything we can to make the artwork, even if we have to rebuild it from scratch. I'd like to give that person as much credit as possible. Where we'll even give them the artwork credit, even if we had to do like most of the rework on it, or if someone just gave us a basic concept, I make sure they at least get a shirt out of it. But if we give them the artwork credit, then they get the full, the payment that we give artists and stuff too, because I really want 26 Shirts to be something that's not just a cool t-shirt company because, Josh Allen jumps over a linebacker and so we have to make a shirt about it and everybody wants to buy the shirt. But I want it to be something that is actually like not only just us putting out these designs and having people buy them and give to the community, but I want the community to participate in the blessing that you feel giving to the community. So as much as people want to contribute, whether it's through ideas, purchases, or even like we have sometimes we'll have people actually like do their own contests and stuff, and so they'll say like, hey, I'm giving away 5 of these shirts because they want to support the cause, and they just do it themselves. We're like, thanks, great. It's awesome that people want to use us to help other people feel better through a contest. I see that question about the copyright for Groot. Yeah, Disney is very strict about it, and it's one of those things where we kind of ran with it. We didn't say Groot on it, and we did our best to make sure it wasn't exactly a Groot-like reference. I mean, it's pretty close, but we were careful to obfuscate it a little bit, but we didn't hear anything from it. So from them, who knows? But we're really careful about that stuff as much, especially, I mean, to be real, like in terms of the teams and all that stuff. When it gets into like the other things as well, we're still obviously respectful. We don't just like drop a picture of Groot and say, here's our shirt. But the main concern is you don't want there to be confusion with someone who's looking at the shirt. They don't want to think that it's a Disney shirt. You don't want them to look at it and say, oh, Disney made this shirt with it. No. So we try to change it up as much as possible. So it's obviously an homage or a reference, but it's not like we're not just lifting their property and dropping it onto fabric and saying, here's our take on it.
So interesting, all the moving parts to it, being able to see behind the scenes, because there's so much engagement. One of the things I say all the time about 26 Shirts, just in general, before I even came back to Buffalo, just watching from afar, is the engagement with the fan base. And not only like, the inclusion is obviously a big part of it, but just, the daily part of it, like you mentioned, just people knowing the first thing to do when they have an idea is to tag 26 Shirts. It's just super cool. And, I think that, you guys are doing a great job. We obviously got the shout shirts out, and, some people already won some shout shirts. I got a bunch more to give out. I'm a little bit delayed on mailing them out. That's going to happen next week. I just checked in with everybody today to give them an update on that. So that'll be excited. I can't wait to see those pictures. But let's get into some Bill stuff here, because, we're in that, we're almost to that lull of the off season. Like, we have OTAs still to come, and we haven't heard necessarily what our access is going to be. You're looking around the league at some of the other teams, the Miami Dolphins. I mean, their media group is back in the building pretty much. And, they're covering every day of practice. So I'm hoping next week, Monday and Tuesday, they're on the schedule as the days that the Bills will start OTAs, that we'll be able to kind of go out there and, bring you guys more content, more, reactionary stuff. Cause that's one of the cool things about that piece, especially, during this pandemic, where there's been limitations on media members. There's been a lot of trust, placed in us to, be those eyes and ears on the ground and to bring that back to you guys. And that was a fun episode on Friday. So hopefully we can do a couple of those next week. Sal Capaccio, fresh back from vacation. Shout out to Sal. He won his golf tournament for the first time in 20 years down in Florida. Very impressive stuff. He tweeted today, 75, he had put out a report, 75 players are in Buffalo this week in preparation for phase 3 to begin next week, obviously with OTAs. Ryan, let's start with you. 75 players showing up already before next week even starts. Does that surprise you? I mean, it seems like we've been trending this way with reports from around the league and, teams that have already held their OTAs or the first parts of it, but 75 players for the Bills. I mean, that seems like a high number.
It does, but it doesn't surprise me at the same point. This is the team that was on the cusp of making it to the Super Bowl. They started out hot in the AFC Championship game. They get out a little lead there, and then obviously we all know how it ends. But it's a team that knows they're close to reaching that pinnacle, and I think they know that every minute that they can have together gets them that one step closer. Whereas last year, they couldn't do that. They were doing everything virtually. Everything was over Zoom. It was an off season like none other. So to actually be in the same building with the guys, to be able to work on your rapport, to be able to work with your line coaches. We talked about that on Friday, how much these rookies are going to benefit from working with Eric Washington. And on the other side of the line, obviously, too, it works both ways. Having your coaches there for you to be able to critique your game. So I'm not shocked at all. I think that this is a team that really wants to show last year was no fluke and that they are a serious Super Bowl contender.
Del, how much are you plugged into this right now? Not only like traditionally most years, not necessarily just 2021, but the mini camp, rookie camp, OTAs, like where's your interest level lie and what do you kind of glean from it as the reporters are out there doing this stuff every day?
Yeah, I read as much as I can, I not every single day, I'm able to actually, work it in, but I read most of your stuff. You can see I share a lot of it through 26 Shirts Twitter account. I read a lot of your guys' stuff. Bill's Wire is great just in terms of how they aggregate so many of the stories, and it's a great place to see what's being reported nationally and everything. And then The Athletic is great too. They have a great app as well to track everything you've read. So I do my best. I kind of comes in bursts for me, I'll spend like a couple days like catching up on the past few days of news, and then there'll be times where I'm like, holy crap, I haven't checked in on like some of the details of the news in like a couple weeks. I need to like get my act together a little bit. So a lot of it is just reading the timeline on Twitter because I'm on there enough, and clicking all the different clickbait and finding out what national reporter or what PFF writer is saying something stupid that week.
Yeah, that's a good point there in terms of what you find this time of year. This time of year, it's kind of like those little blurbs that get found in articles, and then sites run with those aggregated pieces. So the Bills right now are looking at kick returners. It seems like they're trying to bring in as much competition as possible. They lost Andre Robertson free agency to the Houston Texans. Isaiah McKenzie's an internal option. Marquise Stevenson is an internal option, and now they're also working out some other options there too to see maybe if they're worth signing to a contract because the Bills have a few open roster spots. So, in your opinion, Del, why do you think that the Bills are working out more kick returners than just looking at who they already have on the roster?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think they have a really good idea in terms of like who they have on the roster, what they're able to do, especially in terms of Isaiah McKenzie, right? But I think that. For all we know, they're just bringing people in to see how they're just. Sounds dumb saying it when I say it out loud. It makes sense to me what I'm thinking, but like they're filling up time. They're just there's dudes out there that have this skill set. Let's bring them in, so at least we know we're kicking the tires on as many different players as possible, so that even if they decide not to bring anybody in, God forbid something happened during training camp to one of the guys that are on the roster, they've got a short list of of players that they can bring in a pinch who. At least they have a general idea in terms of their skill sets. They're not wasting precious training camp days trying guys out when they know like, oh, that guy doesn't feel anywhere near as well as this guy does. Stuff like that.
Yeah, when I saw the report and the reaction to the report that that the Bills were working out, Badet, I believe, is his name, and Ryan, you mentioned it on social media. He played in the XFL, has some NFL experience. The first thought in my mind was. Look at the depth chart now. Isaiah McKenzie. I know Brandon Powell's in the mix, Marquise Stevenson, and potentially Badet if they sign him. They're coming off of a 2-year run with not only a Pro Bowler, but really an all-pro caliber kick returner. So this group, led by Heath Farwell, they know where that level is that they're most likely going to drop down from. And so I think that there's confidence in Isaiah McKenzie. I think that if they end up getting to September and he's the guy that they run out there on kick and punt returns, I think that he will have earned the job, and I think that there will be faith in him. I think they brought him back in large part because of the versatility and the ability to kind of do both, be that gadget guy, also contribute on special teams. But I also think they're going to throw as many darts at the wall as they can. Powell, drafting Stevenson where they did, and potentially bringing in Badet as well. They want to get a look at as many guys as they can, because if they can find, maybe some of those traits that an Andre Roberts showcased over the course of the, and let's be honest, nobody that they bring into the mix this year most likely is going to be at the level of Andre Roberts. I know he didn't run back a single kick for a touchdown his entire time here in Buffalo in the 2 years that he was here. But man, it is such a special thing for an offense to be able to start, every drive on average at your own 30-yard line. I mean, Brian Dable's talked about it. You just have to go less distance every single time. And how many times, with a game when last season where momentum was kind of hanging out there and a big return from Andre Roberts kind of flipped the script. The Bills go a couple plays, they score a touchdown. That's a big deal. And I think they want to kind of try to find that and emulate it as much as they can, or maybe start to develop that next answer at that position. Maybe that's not Isaiah McKenzie. Maybe they got to bring in a bunch of guys to figure out who that person is going to be. I also think that no matter what they do this year, I do think they value that position, and I wouldn't be surprised if they spend more capital, money, or draft capital in the future at that position once the salary cap goes back to normal, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I saw it in the comments here from Matthew. Roberts was consistent. That's a good way of putting it. He'd get you to the 30. He'd have maybe one or two that'd get you to the 40. And the shorter the field position, the easier it seemed to be for Josh Allen and company to move the ball down the field and score. It's also a big deal when you have a kicker with a big leg like Tyler Bass, who late in a game, whether you're talking 55, 60-yard range, someone that has the leg to do that, Roberts giving them that starting field position to make it more possible for a kick like that to be attempted obviously helps out. So I agree the Bills are going to leave no stone unturned. Whether or not Jeff Badet is the answer or whether it's someone else, I'm sure they're going to bring in a few more players between now and the regular season to see what they have in those players.
One thing that I'm working on right now, I'm writing it as we speak, as we went on the air today. I took a little break from it, is, obviously the kick returner situation, explaining this away a little bit more, because I saw some comments. I can't remember where I did. I don't know if it was fan comments or what, about, maybe Stevenson not looking good in minicamp last year. I don't necessarily think that was the case, because I'm not even sure how much they ran special teams. They were running through some stuff at the beginning of practice, but I don't know how much of, they got the chance to look at Marcus Stevenson and have him actually run back kicks. They were going half speed and there was no context. So it's hard to, maybe judge him like too much from anything that happened at minicamp. I just think it's about, like they mentioned, the darts, and I'm writing about that a little bit. But also 87 roster spots are filled right now. There's 4 available because Christian Wade still falls into that exempt role. And so you start thinking, well, okay, there's some cornerbacks out there, and I think that if you look across this roster, that's the one position, maybe save for a tight end, but I think that tight end would have to be somebody of the Zach Ertz, tier, where you're actually bringing somebody that is no doubt about it, or perceived no doubt about it, upgrade over what you already have here. I think that, Richard Sherman, Steven Nelson, and I also think this, and maybe people will disagree with me, Bashad Breeland is a guy I also throw in the mix there that, you can make the case that they walk in here day one, cornerback number 2. And so from that perspective, we saw a report last week from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN that 14 teams are interested in Steven Nelson, who the Pittsburgh Steelers cut back in March because they saved $8.25 million, a lot like what happened here in Buffalo with John Brown. And so they moved in a different direction the final year of his contract. But he's a guy that's still going to probably command about that, $7 to $10 million range. Really good cornerback. And, the Bills are interested because the Bills, can upgrade there. Let's get into Nelson, in terms of fit and why hasn't he signed? Because I have some ideas on that.
Del, do you want to go first with this?
I have no idea why. This is what
I like that honesty.
I was worried about at the outset. I was like, I don't know.
No, it's fine.
I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, I think players like Nelson, Richard Sherman, they're smart first and foremost. I think they're sitting here and waiting because, one, they know that there's multiple teams interested in their services. Even Richard Sherman had 4 or 5 teams, 49ers, Seahawks, Raiders, and I'm blanking on the other 1 or 2. So one, there's already a market there for you. Maybe you're still not getting that money that you're wanting, but all it takes is one injury at training camp, one injury at an OTA for that demand for a cornerback to go up. And Are either of these players cornerback one material? I don't think so. But if you lose your number one cornerback, would it be good to have a Steven Nelson or a Richard Sherman come in to help shore up your cornerback position? Absolutely. So I also think maybe it's the agents saying, hey, let's sit back and wait. One, you can miss these OTAs. I don't know of many players that like attending them and like go out of their way like, oh, it's OTA time. Let's pack up and go. And two, it's just the money. Wait for that right deal to come along because we've seen some patience pay off for some tackles lately, for some offensive linemen. I think that the same can be said here for these cornerbacks waiting for the right amount of money to become open. Also, post June 1st, cuts can take place, and that can free up some, obviously more so future cap space, but they can also maneuver some money there.
Two things happening for me with Nelson and a potential fit with the Bills. Number one, I don't think it's as easy as it probably appears on paper to come in here and win this cornerback 2 job. I think he probably, if he signs with Buffalo, I think that he eventually probably becomes the cornerback 2, whether it means you have to continue to hold off Dane Jackson. I don't think he'd have a super tough time beating out Levi Wallace, but he's the incumbent starter. He started a lot of games for this team, and Steven Nelson is coming off of a year where he was really, really good in 19, his first year with the Steelers. I thought last year his play dropped off a little bit. And, I went back and I went through his Pro Football Focus numbers, and I know Pro Football Focus, I mean, they just put out some nonsensical quarterback ranking piece where Josh Allen came in number 6 after finishing number 2 in the MVP voting last year. And I get it. There's an argument to be made for the entire body of work and all that. And I try to give PFF, there's things that definitely stand out about them that frustrate you from time to time. The Josh Allen saga is something that we've been pretty vocal about on this show back in, the glory days of it. But I do think that if you dive into the analytics of it, the numbers of it, there are some interesting things to take away from, especially more so than anything else when it comes to grades. Cause I think week to week grades, we can get into that too, but the entire body of work, a full season where you take a player's grades through 16, 17, 18, 20 games, you get kind of an idea of how they played. And last year's arguably the worst year that Steven Nelson has had in 3 seasons. Now, that Pittsburgh defense wasn't as good as it was the previous year. Obviously, issues up front, losing Bud Dupree, I think impacted that. And I think that goes to show you what happened in Buffalo here this offseason and how they chose to attack things on the defensive side, building up front. If you're not good up front, it's going to impact your secondary, because that Steelers secondary was as good as anybody in the league talent-wise last year. And we remember that Bills game. I mean, they started off pretty strong, but after a while, the Bills broke through. The offense, the really good offense, found a way to make plays. So I think that just the competition factor, if you're Steven Nelson sitting back and surveying your options, it's crazy to say because you think he comes in here and just wins that job. But I think that there's valid competition there. And I don't know if he wants that. I see he's liking a lot of stuff on Instagram or whatever, or Twitter, Philadelphia Eagles stuff. So that probably makes a little bit more sense, a path to a role, a defined role. Also, to your point, Ryan, before I get to number 2, I'm interested to see how this works out for a lot of the players that do wait for, OTAs and camp to be gone and try to pull like a Cam Newton from last year. I mean, Cam Newton, a serious veteran who's been in this game a long time, has been in multiple offenses. We saw what happened last year when he got a late start on things and never really could figure it out. If players are even the likes of Richard Sherman, who has also been in this league a long time, if they're hoping to kind of catch on in June or July, get into camp, pick up the scheme, start practicing, I think that they're going to be kind of in a tough spot when it comes to these really tight competitions. So I think ultimately that's what could lead Nelson away from even considering the Bills. And here's the second part, even if there's money, because I don't know if there is money. I mean, there's about $3 million right now the Bills have to work with. I think so they can move some things around. They can restructure Deion Dawkins or, even restructure another deal somehow. We're going to get into it in a little while about this depth chart as we look at it as a whole and kind of break down what might be the toughest position group to really predict. Mario Addison's contract, I mean, you can move on from that in June or July and save yourself a lot of money, even though there's been a vote of confidence from Brandon Beane. So I just think there's a lot of things at play, but I think that a lot like what happened with the UDFAs where, the roster spot isn't guaranteed. I think that kind of applies to some of these unrestricted free agents, some of these higher profile names that could probably be looking at Buffalo in this stacked roster and saying, I'm good. I'm going to go somewhere else, even though it's a chance to win.
No, that's a valid point, and you're right. Clear path to a job makes sense. Money makes sense. Albert Breer today said the Bills had like $3.74 million, so a little less than $4 million, and that's not enough to get a Steven Nelson or a Richard Sherman unless they take a drastic pay cut. And Nelson, a few weeks ago, when asked about why he was still out there, he said it comes down to the money pretty much. So he wasn't shy about that. I don't see him all of a sudden changing his tune in that area. So, yeah, definitely a valid point there. Interested to see what the Bills do when it comes to adding another cornerback potentially. You mentioned Zach Ertz recently. Once again, there's a lot of talk about Philly just kind of waiting down here until June and possibly cutting Zach Ertz, which, I think there was a window for them to trade him if that is the case, if they do end up cutting him, and then maybe it ends up looking kind of foolish that they didn't get anything for him, someone that can still be a high-level player in this league. But that's a wait-and-see situation all in itself.
All right, Del, I posed a question to you. I'm working on my my 53-man roster projection. I think I'm probably going to come out with it Monday, kind of preview OTAs a little bit, and then I'll put out another one after minicamp in June. But, you start looking over this roster and this depth chart and some of the decisions that Brandon Beane, I mean, he set out this offseason to give himself headaches in August when he has to make decisions at some of these positional battles. I asked you to kind of look through and maybe take what you think is the toughest call, and you came away with the guard competition. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I don't know so much if it's about making the team or not, but in terms of who's going to be starting day one, I mean, you got Cody Ford, Forrest Lamp, and Ike Butker. There's only one left guard position. So
right.
Those are three solid plays. I mean, Cody Ford, ended up getting the Bills, selected him pretty high a couple of years ago, ended up getting hurt last year. And then, Butker did a pretty good job filling in after Ford was injured. And then you bring in Forrest Lamp, who's struggled with injuries during his career. But now you guys are the draft experts, and I'm not, because I keep trading out of spots in our Dynasty draft because I have no idea who any of these rookies are.
We should have a little sidebar on that after we get it the depth chart. All right, go ahead.
Right, but anyways, I say that because I guess Lamp was really highly regarded in the 2017 draft.
Right.
So he struggled with injuries. So you have there's a lot of talent there. Some of it raw, some of it just hasn't had the opportunity to shine. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do at that position. I think the other positions on the line are kind of set. So with left guard, it's going to be interesting to see where that lands, week one against Pittsburgh.
I think that's a great position personally to choose. And you mentioned it, Forrest Lamp. I mean, he's kind of like the Quinn Meaners of this year's draft, where he made a lot of noise at the Senior Bowl, raised his stock there, ended up being a second-round pick. And you're right, injuries have just kind of plagued him. Finally was healthy last year for the most part, played well, I should say, maybe not very well. There's a reason why the Chargers let him go and let him walk in free agency. So Lamp is in play. We're still waiting to see a healthy Cody Ford and what he can do on this line. Obviously, Brandon Beane is still a big fan of his based on some comments that he's made. Ike Butker has played quite a bit too. And then you even have some other players that have just kind of been waiting in the wings that you just never know. There's always that one surprise player that kind of comes along and gets some snaps that could compete for that role as well. So it's really going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Indeed. I really like the interior offensive line. Just like the imagination that Bobby Johnson and Brian Dable can use with different combinations throughout training camp. And then what that's going to tell us about how they're going to use that group once you get into the season, because there's got to be real mobility. Because when you go into the year, Mitch Morse is your starting center. I think they bring him back. That's the plan. You got probably Feliciano at right guard. If Mitch Morse, suffers an injury or, heaven forbid, another concussion, that could be a long-term type of situation where Feliciano, to me, even though you have Ryan Bates on the roster, they're starting to work Jack Anderson in kind of a similar role. He's more of an interior player, can play both guard spots and center. And a couple other players probably with center versatility as well. Feliciano moves over to center probably in that scenario, and then who's going to step up and be that guard after that? You mentioned Forrest Lamp. I think that's a really interesting name to watch. To me, Forrest Lamp this offseason, he's like the John Feliciano of this offseason, or, you know, even like a John Brown type of signing. Like, those are guys that go completely under the radar. And I know John Brown had a lot of success before he came to the Bills. Forrest Lamp basically started 16 games last year, and most Chargers fans would tell you he wasn't very good. And so from what they've done in the league perspective, not so much. But I'm just talking about the expectations for not only Bills fans, but like, you know, NFL insiders in general. When John Brown signed with the Bills, it was just like, yeah, that's a nice little piece. And he ended up being, I think he put together the 14th best season in Bills history in 2019. So I think Forrest Lamp has that potential. The problem for him now is the roster that he's arriving at, and it's going to be really tough to break through, because I think Cody Ford's going to be given every opportunity to start at left guard. And I also think Ike Bucker showed last year that it wasn't too big for him, and he's ready to go in whenever they ask him to. But let's flip sides to the defensive line, because that's where you want to take a look at, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm saying defensive end is just stacked, and it's just such a tough decision because in the last 2 years, the Bills have used high picks on AJ Epinesa, on Boogie Basham, on Greg Rousseau. So obviously they're all on this roster. They're locks. You have Jerry Hughes, you have Mario Edison, both over 30, both in the final year of their contract. I would be surprised if Hughes went, but I think that one of them could be the odd man out based on their salary, based on the fact that they want to get younger at that position. And based on the whole salary cap aspect of it, they would save some money parting ways with one of those players. But even beyond that, you have Daryl Johnson, who has played in a depth role at defensive end and really made his living as a special teams player, and a very good special teams player at that. What do you do about him now? Because there's only so many roster spots you can have at that defensive end position. They signed F.A. Obata in free agency, maybe the most successful international pathway player, first to make a 53-man roster, had the best season of his career last year in Carolina. Obviously knows the defensive line coach, Eric Washington, from their time in Carolina together. So there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about him in Buffalo, but at the same time, there's only so many spots to go around. Now, Rousseau, Boogie Basham, they give you that versatility where they can kick inside, but you don't want your two defensive ends that you drafted to be defensive ends playing kicked inside too much. You want them on maybe obvious pass rush situations. Kick one of them inside, then you could have your Addison, your Hughes on the outside, Ed Oliver on the inside next to one of them. So it's all going to be situational, but yeah, there's only so many spots that the Bills have at defensive end, and there's so much talent there. And that's not even counting some of these guys that were on the practice squad the last few years that really face an uphill battle, like a Brian Cox Jr. or a Mike Love.
Let's divert here for a second. I want to get into the sidebar because we have been in the midst of our rookie Dynasty League draft. There's been some shenanigans in the last 24 hours, and I'm not super familiar with the shenanigans, to be honest with you. I just saw some upheaval in the comment section, and I guess it's being worked out as we speak here now. What's your take so far, Del? We're a year in. Who actually won this thing? Because I can't remember now. Who won year one? As soon
Bruce.
as Bruce, no,
Bruce.
of course he did.
Who did he beat in the championship? Who made it all the way, but didn't quite win the championship, but they made it pretty far?
Was it Nate?
No, I don't think it was Nate. That's my claim. Yeah. It's my claim is I hung with you guys for an entire season. Now it's gonna get tough because all these dudes are entering through the draft and everything, and I have no idea who half these guys are. Chris Trapasso has like 75 picks in these 4-round rookie draft. I think he drafted like half the players entering the league.
We should have known too. We should have known that too as he started, offering.
Dude, he started
all these
a wide
trades.
receiver
He's the draft
quarterback
guy.
at the end of the season last year. He was starting a wide receiver at quarterback. Like he was like not even shamed. There was no shame with him when it came to tanking. Like that dude tanked. Like he could teach the Sabres some lessons. Man. But yeah,
I do have to talk to Nate about this website. Like I'm lining it. I'm bringing it up on my desktop here, and it's brutal. I can't figure out how to see other people's roster. It's called Sleeper.
Yeah.
I like it on the app, but I don't like it on the desktop.
Mm.
I lost to Geary.
It's definitely made for
year.
a mobile experience.
Yes. I lost to Geary in like the first round of the playoffs. My team was much better. I'm actually just embarrassed about it. And that's why I said I think he made it to the championship, because I was hoping that at least he made it to the championship. But then I remembered that you did. So that's good. Ryan, who did you get in the first round? I didn't have a first round pick because I traded it to Trapasso for Aaron Jones last year as I was trying to make a run at a title, which was thwarted in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I ended up with Travis Etienne, and I was just heartbroken last year, and I'm still not almost ready to talk about it. I was playing Bruce in the semifinals, and Derek Carr got injured in that game, like one series in. Had I had a regular quarterback output, I would have beaten him in that game. I lost by less than 20 points to him. And, of course, Derek Carr gets injured after one series in that matchup. I had Kirk Cousins sitting on the bench, and he ended up with like 30 points that week, of course, the one week that Kirk Cousins performs well. So I was still hurt about that. I had traded Bruce, Aaron Rodgers earlier in the season. So I made a lot of mistakes last year thinking about it as a dynasty draft long-term, but live and learn. Happy to get Travis Etienne in here. Grabbed Kellen Mond later in the draft as a backup option, a future option there behind Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. So we'll let him sit for a year and see what he becomes.
Speaking of, go ahead, Dal.
Oh, no, I want to yell, Ryan. Dude, I was just about to draft him. You were one pick ahead of me. That's why I traded out. I was like, I traded up to 3, and then I traded out of it because these picks, there's so much time in between picks that like I just get my ADD kicks in. And I trade up to 3. I'm like, oh well, now I'll trade out of it. I've had so much time to think about it. And so I'm like, at my spot where it was originally like 11 or whatever, and you picked 10, ETN right ahead of me, and I was watching him fall. I'm like, this is gonna be so perfect. And then when that happened, I was like, I'm out. And I traded away to Joe DiBiase for Kareem Hunt. So,
yeah, and it's nuts. The super flex leagues are nuts because you can start 2 quarterbacks. So there's always going to be a run on quarterbacks early in these rounds. So 4 of them went. I wasn't sold on Mac Jones, so ETN fell right into my lap, and I just said you almost have to take him at that point.
This poor audience is like, dudes, we don't care about your
we don't care about your roster.
There was one good question in here though that I wanted to hit before we wrap this thing up. Which defensive lineman would you trade for Zach Ertz? And now, first and foremost, I'm not necessarily sure that gets it done, but in a situation where you can maybe deal, a day 3 pick and a defensive lineman, who makes sense in a deal to try to get Zach Ertz? And do you do that deal? How badly do you want Zach Ertz? Because I feel like I teeter-totter on like the Zach Ertz. What are those things called? What are those things called?
Literally, yeah, or teeter-totter. I mean,
yeah. I was trying to use both terms.
I'm teeter-tottering. What's that thing called?
Yeah, you're right. Okay, I already said it. But I feel like I go back and forth. I feel like there's, you talk yourself into it, and then you think about the injuries, and you think about, the lack of production with Carson Wentz. And, I know that, Josh Allen is trending in this really nice direction, but, who's to say that, in a situation where you go all in and you bring in Zach Ertz and, Josh Allen, I don't even want to say it because I know Bills fans will get all, real emotion in their feelings in the comments. But if there is a bit of a regression or something like that, I don't foresee it. But if there is one, I don't think anybody foresaw Carson Wentz absolutely falling to the depths of bad that he fell to after that MVP caliber season before he got hurt. Things happen in this league. So I just don't know how much of a difference maker Zach Ertz is specifically in this offense. But if you're going to make the deal, who do you send in terms of defensive linemen?
Del, do you want to go first?
I have no idea who you would send because I have Zach Ertz is how old?
He's 30.
30? Only 30. Okay, I thought he was older than that.
Yeah, so for me personally, I would have to look at the dead cap, but I would be willing to move one of an Addison or I'm not sure. I like Hughes too much to say Hughes, but if it works out financially where you're sending about the same amount back and the dead cap isn't high, because I need to look at both of them. I'm not anticipating them trading one of those players, but The whole cap part of it plays into it, in my opinion. And Zach Ertz, with the salary that he'd be coming in, you'd want to have a wash there almost. So I guess I would say Mario Addison, does that move the needle for the Eagles? I don't know. Obviously up there in age, but final year of a contract, so you could part ways with him after if you feel like defensive end is an area that you're lacking. It's just a 1-year deal. You are getting rid of a contract that you plan on getting rid of, so that might be enough to do it for the Eagles.
Interesting stuff. I think there's more to come. I mean, Brandon Beane was not shy about talking. He appeared 2 times on WGR after the draft, and he spoke both times about, being a shopper on a limited budget. And, there's still moves that can be made financially to get this cap to where they need it to be to make a move. And it's weird. Like in the last 2 years, I mean, going into this time of year, there was still plenty of money available, and he likes to set things up that way. So he has some mobility and able to make some moves, but we'll see how this thing goes. Del Reid coming through on short notice. Fun show, hanging out. We gotta get over to the house at some point. We'll do some drinks out on the new patio. We just put a patio in the back, and I gotta set it up. I'd invite Ryan too, but we'll have to schedule it when he's going to be in town. Yeah, that whole 2-hour drive it's a lot. Thanks for coming on, man. It's so much fun.
Oh yeah, well, let's get one of those cardboard cutouts of Ryan or something like that. Like,
yes, with his office coffee mug. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. No, guys, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoy hanging out with you guys and just shooting the breeze and talking Bills and whatever else. Anytime the opportunity is there, I'm gonna hop on and chat with you guys. So I always appreciate it.
Get over to 26 Shirts. The retail store is wide open. It's awesome. It's a cool thing to kind of get in there, take a look behind the scenes. You can see into the big shirt room or can you still see into that? Am I giving away?
Yeah, there's curtains. We don't really actively encourage people to like poke their head in the curtains into the office area, the big area. But if you ask nicely, we might let you peek in there and take a look.
Yeah, I thought that was fun to kind of see all of the the shirts behind the scenes. Like you walk in there and there's just like all of these like shelves of shirts everywhere, which, it's a shirt store. So obviously, but the retail store, I'm excited to get back there now that it's up and running, see some people in there. We can go places without masks now, which is awesome. Ryan, hit us with your final thought before we get out of here.
Yeah, final thought. Looking forward to next week. Like you said, hopefully you can be there up close and personal. The Bills fans are just excited for any kind of football content there is, and keep your eyes locked on nyup.com, syracuse.com, and the Shout Buffalo Football podcast for all of that news early next week.
All right, boys. Bills Mafia, hang in there. We'll see you next week. Hopefully, like Ryan said, with some OTA